Hello everyone, I'm so happy to have you here at VueJS Live this year in April. Well, I don't want to spoil too much, so let's start with this fact. There's something you did in this real world some days before, and I know that you did it because you're here, you're watching my talk. To be able to do so, you need to get a ticket, maybe it's even connected to your name. And with this ticket, with this access, you are able to join me here. So in order to join me, you need to authenticate yourself, right? And this is actually what I want to talk with you about, authentication, but only the most important part. So you can have the same learning as I had, that it's not that intimidating as it might look like. Well, don't get me wrong, in a way it's still that it's intimidating. So because it shows that you are taking the responsibility seriously for such a workflow, which is important and needs to be kept secure. But you don't need to be scared when it comes to implementing it into Vue. And I will show you. But before that, real quick, my name is Ramona. I'm working as a developer advocate at Authn In Vue. But beside that, I'm a Google developer expert in web technologies, a woman TechMaker ambassador, and a Cypress ambassador. And unlike the last times where I talked with you about testing, this time I want to talk with you about security-related topics, especially when it comes to such a sensitive workflow as a login. It's equally important, if not more important, than software quality, and it's entangled. So yeah, let's start. So I asked you the question, who are you indirectly when it comes to being able to enter this conference? But answering the question, who are you, or who are you, actually, is something you do a lot of times when it comes to your real life, your daily doing, but also when it comes to web development, or like even in movies, it happens. Just as in this short film, which is called Who Are You?, which was directed by Julio Pot in 2019. And basically, the film is about answering this question and imagining if someone asked it, we will answer with a whole life story, which I do think that every one of us here knows that it's nothing we need to answer, right? So no matter if you are asked, who are you in real life, or if you have some cases inside of your applications where this answer needs to be given, you need to give a valid answer, a short answer, but a secure one, so the person asking it or the service asking it can be sure that you are who you are. You can be sure when it comes to the process of authentication. But let's define what authentication really is to have a shared sense of understanding, so we know what we're talking about. Okay, the first part I did was looking it up in Oxford Dictionary, and they say that authentication is the process or action of proving or showing something to be true, genuine, or valid. If we refer that to software engineering, as Oxford does too, they say it's the process or action of verifying the identity of a user or process. Or in simpler words, given by me, we want to determine whether someone or something is who or what they say they are. And as said, I will focus on the most key aspects here. And this implies that it's not a deep dive. I want to get you started when it comes to the topic of authentication, but I always try to refer to further resources by QR code, for example. And if you cannot screenshot it or take a picture of the QR code or scan it in time, I will share my slides later anyway, so don't be worried about that. Okay, I said I want to show you the most important parts, and this is one of those in my cases, or in my opinion. So first thing first, I want to talk about terms, because people like to mix it up, including me. So I hope I will not do this inside of this talk this time, hopefully not, but let's be really clear on that one. Authn, or authentication, is the one as defined before. We want to verify who the user is and validate their identity before granting access to our features, to protected resources, whatever. And authorization of that is something different, even if they are connected. Authorization means that, I'm a little too fast, I'm sorry. Authorization means that you should need to see if the authenticated user, so we already know who they are, has the permission to see or do these things inside of your app. So this process is more granular. We will determine the permissions a user have, who we know who he is. So like giving them a certain role, if they're an administrator, an editor, whatever. ACL basically. So these are two different terms, but they are connected because authentication is the first step to make authorization decisions. So first we need to see who the person are, and then as soon as we know that, we can decide what they are capable of doing inside of our application. But how can we implement such a flow in a single page application, especially as there are some differences to consider? And how do we want to there we are, authenticate to the server in general? Because there are some ways. It's not only one way of authenticating, right? We need to decide on 3 factors which we want to use. This could be something we know, like a username or password, something inside of our heads. It could be something we have, like a cell phone, like I have here, or a debit card, or even a YubiKey, something physical in most cases. Or something we are, like the fingerprints we have or Face ID. Most can be the points where we can authenticate, where we can prove who we are. So, but if we decide on those, or if we think about authentication, I guess this view will come into your mind real quick, right? It's the typical login UI, having a username in it, a password in it, and asking for it. So this is referring to something we know, both of those. And as it's only one factor, let's call it single factor authentication. But it doesn't need to be something we know. It can be any factor of those 3 mentioned before. And as it's pretty simple, let's think about a small demo, a small code example to build a simple authentication in Vue. Okay, this is my project setup for the simple one. It's a typical Vue 3 project with Vue router in it. But there's some addition. We need some backend, some database basically. In my case, I will mock it by using an Express server. And a little spoiler before, we will use the JSON Web Token library later on as dependency. When it comes to the structure, we will have the typical ones for the Vue projects, like separate UI parts, like being a home view, a login view, a dashboard, which might be protected later on. The root.js for the Vue router to protect the dashboard root, for example, and define the others without protection. And last but not least, the backend mock, which creates all the users we want to validate against. You can take a look at it at StackBlitz. So there's an instance I built for you. I will pin it on lots of slides, so you don't need to scan it right now. And there's a GitHub repository too. So this is the backend mock. It's pretty simple. So I built a small standard Express server, which contains a login root. So before we will take a look at this root, I want to hard code a mock user. So an array with some user in it, since we don't have a database of a kind. Of course, you should use a database, but I want to keep it simple for now. After we have this, we will define inside of the login root, we will get the user the client sent and find out if it's in our database mock. So, of course, you will replace this with your database query later on to fetch user data, but this will basically do the check if the user credentials are valid or not. And depending on those, like those find, we will see if we are authenticated and send a status code of 200 or not. So it's really simplified, I know, but it should do it for now. And now we could take a look at our Vue router, where we will define the routes and protect the dashboard by setting requires auth to true in the meta part of our definition. Setting it to true, and then going to the login view, where we will, I guess, first access the username or password the user entered by using the view model for it. Then we, will build the request for the mock inside of a try catch, because some things could go wrong sometimes. But let's get it going. So we will build the request by posting it by using Axios. We will post it to the endpoint we built for our little backend mock, and give a header. So we will set the content type to application JSON to work with it easily, and add the data with the username and password. Yes, and if the response has some data in it, so it's successful, we will set login failed to false, which gives some styling and some error handling, so everything's fine. And we will able to navigate to the dashboard resource without being blocked. We will check that out if it's really working, so don't worry. Okay, if there's no data into it, we will set login failed to true, so we can style our login UI accordingly, and give a little console error to say that the username or password is invalid. Please think about a vague error message here, so we will not give some information to a possible attacker, of course. We will have a similar error handling inside of the catch block if something goes wrong, of course. Okay, let's see. I tried to access the dashboard, and we are not able to access it. Yay, it's working. So let's see if we can access the dashboard with wrong user credentials, which would be bad, of course. And we are blocked. So it's working out. We have an error. And okay, when it comes to using valid credentials, as you see, we're logged in. We are able to access the dashboard. So we were able to build a small, traditional but simplified login workflow. Woohoo! Okay, let's take a look at some more secure way and some way which is more tailored to a single page application, right? I would like you to recommend an authentication way which is called token-based authentication. A token is actually a unique identifier representing something, and this something can be something with meaning, so you can define it yourself what is basically made. It can be anything, any information. There are 3 kinds of tokens. The access token, for example, we use access tokens to allow applications to access APIs. It could be a refresh token, which is refreshing a session, obviously, and an ID token. But in this case, to be exact and precise, we want to use a JWT token for access token, which is like this JWT is short for JSON Web Token. And such a token looks like this. So this is actually a screenshot of the JWT.io page sample, where you can debug those tokens and validate them. But I like to use it because it's pretty obvious what it's made of. So there are 3 parts in it. First, the header, which contains metadata like type, algorithm for signing. The second one, the pink one, is the payload, the biggest part, where the meaning is stored. If you decode it, it has claims in it. It's called claims. So those claims are like the information you want to store, and it's made of key value pairs with meaning. May it be a user role, may it be a name, may it be a user ID, whatever you want to store in it. And last but not least, in teal color, it's the signature. And this is the thing which I really like on JWT token. They can be verified, which means you can determine if the sender of the token is valid, so is the person you expect or the instance you expect, and you can be sure that nothing was messing around with your token while sending it. So it's not edited, it's not altered, it's the thing you expect. Okay, let's see how to implement it. So we will go to our server mock and then implement JWT. I added the repository, how to install it as a QR code. So let's import it. Then we will set a security key. It can be your real keys if you want to, but I'm just using a mock right now. Can be like a valid one if you want to. And then we will create the token by using jwt.sign as a function, which needs the information you want to store in it. In this case, I would like to use the user IDs and the role, even though we don't take care of authorization right now, but just to store some information. We will add the secret key to sign it. And then we can add some options too, like the expiry, like how long this token is valid, for example. And then we can put it into the response and send it. And react to it later on inside of our login view. So let's go back to the login view. Yes. And there we will use it. So if the response has the token in it, we want to store it. Let's store it for now inside of the local storage, but be careful. I don't put this comment in without a reason, so be careful here. But I don't want to do a spoiler alert right now, so we will store it here. And then we can be considered logged in. And yeah, basically user styling to be logged in and to be able to navigate to the dashboard again. Router push, you know it, how it's working in Vue. Okay, so let's test it out. I will log in with a invalid user. We should be blocked from accessing. We are, wonderful. And now I'm using valid credentials, and I want to take a look at the token we generated inside of the local storage. I will copy paste it to JWT.io to debug and validate it and see if it's a valid token, and it is. So yeah, we build a token-based authentication here. But as said, we need to be careful because we use the local storage, and this is not a good idea, right? So I used local storage for the demo for simplicity and time reasons. But you need to really be careful on how you store the tokens inside of your browser, because local storage is not effective when it comes to protection against cross-site scripting or XSS. Because attackers' JavaScript could run on the same origin as your token is stored. And this makes it easy for the attacker to retrieve your secrets. So how can we be more secure here? We could use HTTP-only cookies. We can utilize our web workers to improve this, or in-memory storage. For now, I want to show you how to use an HTTP-only cookie instead of local storage. So let's go back to our backend mock and do these slide changes. We will alter the course configuration to prevent course errors when we do the things we need to do. So we will set credentials to true, and we will define an origin. And after the token is signed, we want to set this token to the header, to the set cookie header, which we will use. And as soon as you set this header and get it as response inside of your client, the cookie will be set automatically. Okay, so all of those opportunities sound complicated, right? Especially considering the fact it's so important to keep everything secure. And I know I really used an easy example for showcasing authentication here. And at latest, if you're using stuff like multi-factor authentication passwordless, or want to have passkeys as authentication. This could be really difficult to implement on your own. So it might be a good idea to consider using tools or libraries to build authentication, so they do it for you and you can focus on the more important things. So if you're interested to, for example, try out Authn In Vue, because they do exactly that, building authentication and authorization, you could check out the Vue SDK. You could even try out Authn In Vue for free. And for most small projects, the free tier is far enough. Okay, so when it comes to answering the questions of who we are, who you are, or who Vue is, we don't need to be worried. No matter if it's inside of the movie, where it basically doesn't matter, which is a really not helpful answer when it comes to web applications. But you don't need to be worried when it comes to building authentication inside of Vue.js. So, okay. But I showed you how to do it. And let's still summarize what to take away from this talk, right? So, if there are 4 things I want you to keep in mind, it's those. Secure authentication is crucial, so please handle this topic with care and try not to stick to a simple workflow. Authentication is connected to authorization, but it's not the same. So please try to not mix it up. There are 3 authentication factors to remember. So something you see, something you are, and something you have. Something you know, something you are, and something you have, sorry. And you can build it in vanilla pretty easy with like Vue library usage, or you could rely on tools if you want to. Okay, so this is it from my talk. I'm happy that I was able to show you the little journey of authentication. If you got any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat, or reach out to me when it comes to like all platforms, which you could basically use, maybe Twitter, maybe LinkedIn, like that. And what's left than saying thank you for listening, and I hope I was able to keep you less frightened when it comes to authentication. See you.
Hi, Ramona. So the question was, where would you store session data, especially in the content of authentication? And most of the people say local storage and cookies. I myself say cookies because I don't know, this is the way I do things. Nobody said another way, or session storage. What do you think about it? Does it make sense?
Well, I would go with cookies too, and it was really fascinating to see the pool developing throughout the talk. It was like side by side. I was not completely sure if cookies would be on the first rank or local storage, but I'd go for cookies. As I briefly covered in my talk, if you go for local storage, it's a little, let's say it's risky. I don't want to be too negative, because when it comes to cross-site scripting and injections, it might be a little dangerous to have your tokens inside of local storage, because all the things which could be like read can be read by an attacker too. So beware to not do it, even though I can understand that it might be a little annoying to go by cookies when it comes to cores, but it's more safer that way, having a cookie with HTTP only in it. So Steve, I guess, already asked in the Q&A, what's the best approach? Being cookie, set it HTML only, and I do think I have the part inside of my repository. If not, I will push it after the talk.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Going back to the questions, the Q&A on Slido. So we have a few of them. Let's start by the one from Steve Popola, which is, I agree that storing tokens in local storage is not secure. What is the best approach to handling storage of tokens?
As I put it into a cookie, it's easy to do. Put it HTTP only, so it cannot be read by an attacker and cannot be meddled around with.
That's the only way. Okay.
It's a way I would like suggest, because you, of course, you could go by in-memory storage, but it might be a little more complicated to do so, or like utilizing your web workers if you want to.
Okay. We have another one of like, are there some packages for authentication for Vue or Next?
Well, as far as I know, there are no official ones by the core team of Vue or Next. However, there are some community things. I guess the most well-known one is the next one, the next Authn one. And I guess it's well-maintained too. Same with the Vue Vue one. I guess there was last month there were a couple of changes. It's based on Vue Authenticate, I think, or Vue Auth, but the original repositories are fairly old, so I would take a look at the ones I mentioned before.
Yeah, makes sense. We have another question, which is, do we really need passwords?
Well, there are some ways of authentication where you don't need to use a password, which I actually like because I'm a messy brain. I cannot remember all of my password, and I do use a password manager, but still. There are lots of ways to go passwordless, like the typical things you remember, Slack having a link to log in, or the OTP ones, like the codes you can send by SMS, email, whatever. But you could think about passkeys, for example, too. So this web and implementation where you can log in cross-platform, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. What about any tips to raise security in login processes even further?
Well, Jakub had a wonderful talk, which I really recommend you to take a look at. The general things I would like to recommend, especially as broken access control. And I know that's more an authorization thing, but authentication is the first step of authorization. So we will say that broken access control is still the most dangerous or rank 1 security threat by OAuth, like stated by them. My favorite thing is doing rate limiters, so nobody can DDoS your password. And a really simple thing to make it more secure is using generic error messages inside of your login process. So for example, if someone enters a wrong password, don't say it's the wrong password, just say like it's the wrong combination, so nobody knows, is it the email, the username, the password, or whatever. So some UX things can help you too.
Yeah, not like helping the attacker guessing what's happening, but like letting him in the dust. And
exactly.
Would you mind sharing more resources to learn authentication?
Of course, of course.
This is maybe better on like Discord, where you could actually post some links, but maybe out of like that.
Absolutely. So I guess I can use Discord, of course, but I guess maybe it's a good idea to do that on Twitter or X or LinkedIn too. True. So I guess I will just, try to find some resources. I want to share my slides anyway, so you can not be like, oh my God, I missed the QR codes. You don't need to be worried about that. I guess I can put them all into one place. Yeah,
true. So that's all. If you want to contact with Ramona, you can get on her Twitter, which is Lajtekik, I hope.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, wonderful pronunciation. Yeah.
And thanks again, Ramona. And let's continue with the conference.
Yeah, thanks for having me.